Hi everyone. I'm really out of breath and these headphones don't work very well. So sorry for weird quality or like noises that come from me. I want to talk about the Australia effect because I see it on TikTok all the time and I think it's a fucking crock of bullshit to be 100% honest with you. I'm going to be real from the jump. I think what a lot of the Australia effect is people finally moving out and becoming self-sufficient. And that innately forces a glow up. I think, and obviously that isn't everyone. Like, obviously there are some people that really do come out here and like thrive, and it's like they do have like respectfully, everyone looks better with a tan. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really think that you can accredit that to being the Australia effect. But yeah, like I said, I don't think that applies for everyone. I think there are a lot of people that do genuinely really like sort of fit in with the lifestyle out here. And obviously Australia is a very, very big place with a lot of different cultures, so it definitely depends where you are. I live on the Gold Coast, which is, I think when people say Australia effect, this is what they're referencing, like waking up at 5 a.m., coffee every day, beach walks, beach runs, wearing active wear, and like I don't know, like being really health conscious and taking care of yourself and having, I think a big part of it honestly is just seeing more sun. It sounds so stupid, but being English or Welsh or Irish or Scottish or where, you might not even be from the UK, you might be from somewhere completely different, but if you come from a place that inherently doesn't have very much sun, just being exposed to sunlight completely shifts your mood, like completely. And when you're in that for an extended period of time, obviously it causes shifts. You have more urge to get up in the morning, especially like, so I live on the east coast, so we have really, really beautiful sunrises here, and everyone gets up for them. Like people get up at 5 a.m. every day to go and watch the sunrise, and it's like one of my favorite things about living here is being so close to the beach and getting to experience that every morning, because it literally is sunny every single day. But I think there's a lot of things that are credit to the Australia effect that honestly are just learning basic life skills. And it doesn't really matter to me whether they credit it to Australia or not. I mean, if you learn it in Australia, call it the Australia effect. But I think the main thing for me, oh my God, it's so hot, I'm walking up a hill. This is not good. The main thing for me, I went to uni, so I'd lived on my own for 3 years before moving to Australia. And, in uni, you learn a lot about how to be self-sufficient. I think it's like if you go to university, you learn your course, and if you go to uni, you learn how to live on your own. I don't know about that, but that's kind of like the way it was always discussed, is like the whole thing with uni is the hidden curriculum. You learn about living with people and relationship dynamics and how to fend for yourself, how to do a food shop. Why is it so difficult to learn how to do a food shop, how to meal prep? Like, it's all a really big learning curve. And I think, I know I'm not the only person that has this affliction, but I'm very much one of those people where I always think that I've done something until something else happens and I realise I hadn't really done it at all. Like, you always think you're smarter than you are. You always think that you're like more developed than you are, or like, it's like you can look back on yourself from 5 years ago and be like, oh, I thought I knew so much then. But then you look at yourself now and realise how much more you've learned. And then the same thing happens every 6 months. Do you know what I mean? And I think like one of the funniest things that I realised was like, I was self-sufficient. I did live on my own and I did do my own food shop and I did whatever. But I went to uni an hour away from my home. I could just drive home. And there was plenty of times that I did, if things got tough in uni or I was upset or I had a falling out with one of the people that I lived with, I would just drive home. And to me, that is escapism, and probably really enabled my avoidant tendencies. And when you live in Australia, you can't really do that. Like, that's not really an option here. I mean, it is, sure, you can go home, but it's not really. I mean, if you go home, you kind of, what's the point? Do you know what I mean? What's the point? Like, unless you're done. So I decided that I'm coming home because I'm done. Like, I feel like I'm ready to come home. I miss my family a lot. I'm like mentally kind of over it. I think it's a beautiful place and I've loved the year that I've spent here, but it's just, for me personally, too far from my family. Sorry. And I think for me, like, I've always found that things start to go wrong for me when I start to ignore signs. And I'd started to have a bit of a niggle about, like, oh, maybe you should think about going home. I was thinking about it a lot. And then so from there, things started going wrong. And I think that in itself is kind of the whole point. You know, it's like, okay, you ignored it a little bit, so then things start going wrong. But it's not like, you know, I had one bad day and booked to fly home. But I don't know, like, I really feel like over the year that I've lived here, I've gone through a lot of different phases of realizing ways in which I was clinging on to dependency, I guess. And whether that be dependency through relationships or finances or a career or feeling like I was successful enough, whatever it was, like, I was always clinging to something to make me feel okay instead of just realizing that I was okay. And I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I sound like I'm being really cryptic, and I'm still really out of breath, and I'm trying not to be really cryptic. I don't mean to be, but I think one of the biggest realizations that I have had out here, especially seeing my friends go through trials and tribulations and seeing them go through like massive upheavals and housing situations and job situations and all these things like that, you really begin to understand how resilient we really are as humans. And I think that's one thing. I have a complex relationship with resilience because I've spoken about this before, but I've had a few near-death experiences. And for anyone that's kind of come out of the other side of one of those, you kind of realize that you've lived your whole life thinking that you were indestructible. And death was always just kind of this weird, vague idea of something that probably didn't even exist, but you knew was going to happen one day, but not anytime soon. And then when it confronts you and you're, you know, kind of staring it in the face, it's very harrowing. And especially, like, I mean, I went through this at 18 and 20 and 21. I'm 3 years clean of near-death experiences so far, which is lovely. I'm really happy about that. But yeah, so I think the first one really made me realize that I need to start living my fucking life, because, like, what am I doing? But then I think when the second and the third one hit, I remember thinking, like, I'm just like a walking death magnet. And that was something I grappled with for a really long time. And I actually see a lot of TikToks recently about people that have either had illnesses or had accidents or been in domestically violent relationships, I don't know, where they've been, like, their lives have been put at risk, that they kind of think the same thing, you know. It's like thinking, like, whoa, I don't even know how to explain it to you unless you've experienced it, but it kind of forces you to confront your own morality. And that is something that is really weird and uncomfortable. And as I was saying earlier about feeling resilient, it really does not make you feel very resilient at all. It makes you feel very weak. And it's sad because I don't think that we should think this way about ourselves. I don't think that we should feel weak just because you have an accident or, I don't know, an injury, or you go through something at the hands of someone, whatever it is. That shouldn't be cause for you to feel weak, but it just kind of does. And I think, honestly, it took putting myself in a really uncomfortable position, because being out here, like, I've had a pretty smooth ride, to be fair, give or take like a few instances. But I think the biggest thing for me is seeing how so many of my friends, and myself included, kind of, okay, this is like a niche reference, and also I don't know how to explain this without sounding really weird. I've always kind of viewed humanity as like a really resistant strain of bacteria. Like, we kind of just come on Earth being the apple or the orange or what, the human, whatever it is that, like, you know, the bacteria has landed on, and then we just like multiply and expand, and we're really fucking resilient, and it's really hard to get rid of us. And it's like, you know, when we've decided we want to do something, or we want to stick to something, it's happening, you know. And as much as I think this bacterial analogy is kind of really useful to describe things like climate change and war and horrible, terrible things that happen to the earth, there is a kind of silver lining of the fact that it does show our resilience and our adaptability, I think, is maybe probably a better word. Like, we as humans are so easily adaptable. And even if you look at, you know, evolution, like, we adapt as we pass our DNA down into our children to better survive, you know. And I think it's really funny because you see these studies that are done where it's like, someone, you know, I think it's like you hold like 4 generations back of experiences within the human DNA. So it's like, you know, my parents and my grandparents, my great grandparents, and my great great grandparents, like, I hold all of their lived experiences in my body without even realizing. And, you know, I wasn't even alive when my great grandparents were alive. Like, I've never met them once, and I feel like there's things that they did that allowed me to do the things that I'm doing now, you know. And I actually made a podcast the other day, but I don't think I'm going to post it because it's kind of negative. And it was about how basically so many women have effectively paved the way for us to be able to do anything. It's like, if you are wearing trousers or have a phone or have a car or can vote or have your own house or have a job or can dye your hair crazy colors and get tattoos, all those things, like, a lot of women suffered to allow you that choice. And I think, I don't know how I've gotten to this point from the Australia effect. Maybe I'll circle it back somehow. I think when you look at our ability to choose, as particularly my generation and the generations after me, we are so boundless in our options. And I think if you're, you know, looking into the thing of resilience and being adaptable, I think the main thing that has kept us down before has never been our lack of resilience. It's never been our lack of adaptability. It's always been our rights, especially as women, for one. But yeah, I think, you know, it was never about if we were good enough, or if like we could do it, or whatever. It was never if you could run the 5K on Bondi Beach in the morning. It was that you weren't in the location to do that. You know, you weren't in a location where you were around people that were running, because that's actually, like, okay, it's kind of a sidetrack, and I don't know how I've managed to switch this back to Australia, but like, that's a major thing here that I have experienced, is that most of the people in Australia that I have met hold you to a really high standard for yourself. And that's not kind of the norm in the UK. Um, that kind of like I think hustle culture is more the norm in the UK, but that's more sort of like work related. Whereas I think health culture is a lot more prevalent in Australia. And having people that will hold you accountable, or having the systems and the groups, like, it's so easy to join a run club here, or to join a gym, or to find someone that will do a class with you or whatever. Whereas back home, like, I don't have a gym on every corner that I can go to. Like, if I don't have a car, I can't get to the gym. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's again the accessibility to these resources, and that is the main thing that funds privilege, I think, is like you just have access to resources that you didn't before. And I don't know if I would innately say that that means you've glowed up, because in my head, a glow up is like you've gone out of your way to do something. And I'm not saying going to the gym is not hard. It is hard. I go to the gym. It's horrible and it's hard. But what I'm saying is the motivation to do these things is so much higher because of the lifestyle that is perpetuated around those kind of cultures. Does that make sense? Like, the English pub culture doesn't really correlate to any kind of like health and wellness lifestyle unless you're in one of those like run clubs that goes to the pub on a Sunday. I don't really know about those. I'm not really a run club kind of girl, to be honest. Kind of like running on my own. I also watched this YouTube video about how like run clubs are like the new dating apps, and that just really gives me the fear. But yeah, it's something that I think is really interesting. Like, we, attribute this whole Australia effect to like, oh my God, I'm glowing up, I'm glowing up, I'm glowing up. And it's like, no, you always had that in you. That was always there. You've just been put in an environment that it's basically, metaphorically speaking, you're a bonsai plant that outgrew its old pot and you just got put in a bigger pot. That is basically all it is. Oh God, there's a girl beefing someone on the phone. Sorry, that was really sidetracked. Yeah, you've just outgrown your old pot. That's all it is. And now that you're in a bigger pot, and the pot has a gym and a spa and the sun and cheap groceries, it's easier to do those things that seemed inaccessible before. Like, do you know how fucking cheap it is to eat healthy here? Because everything in the shops is fucking healthy. Like, obviously, like within reason, but it's it's just more accessible. And I think I don't like seeing people giving their credit away to other establishments or other, like, and right, okay, I just want to say, I know it's not that deep. Like, I know someone's going to be like, oh my God, it's just a TikTok trend, it's not that deep, like, shut up. But nothing's that deep. We can still like psychoanalyze it anyway. But yeah, it's like, give yourself that credit. Like, you've done that, you've made that change, regardless of whether you're in Australia or England or Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan, wherever you were. It doesn't matter. Like, you still did that for yourself, and that is something that you should be proud of. And that is my hot take of the day. I'm going now because I'm so thirsty and I need some water. I'm going to pass away. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.